I recently read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, and it was very good. I want to talk about the characters, and specifically, I want to rank them. I've drawn little pictures of every character that I'm going to rank, and I'm not an amazing artist, but I like them, and I'm going to put them up on this bulletin board right here. There are 3 things I want to tell you about this book before we get started. The first one is that a lot of the characters have the same name, and this is because the book is about a twisted and sprawling family tree and about the patterns that show up generation after generation. The second thing is that this book can be categorized as magical realism, which means that weird stuff is going to happen in the middle of ordinary life, and people aren't going to freak out too much. I like to think of these things as the literal plot and as metaphors at the same time. The third thing is that somebody saw me reading this book, and they came up to me and they told me that when they were reading the final passage of this book, that they felt like they were levitating. Okay, tier list time. I tried to include all the main players in here. I had to draw the line somewhere. There's a bunch of characters, some that I liked. I didn't end up putting on this list just because I felt like I didn't have enough space on the bulletin board. We're gonna go in chronological order based on this family tree at the beginning of this book. There's a few extra characters who are not on the family tree that I did include, and this whole thing is based very subjectively on how much I like the characters and also how much I liked reading about them. All right, let's go. So the kind of founding couple of this family is Jose Arcadio Buendia and Ursula Iguaran. Let's start with Jose. This is Jose. So Jose is kind of the patriarch of the Buendia family. Him and his wife Ursula leave their village and they found the village of Macondo. He plans the whole place. He makes a beautiful town. He's insanely smart. On his own, he deduces that the earth is round. He also has like an extreme charisma and a deep love for knowledge and figuring things out, which sometimes can lead to him having great success, but more often than not kind of leads him astray. Later in life, he's tied up to a tree. He kind of went crazy and his family tied him up there and he sat there for decades. One thing to note that might be considered a negative is that Ursula Iguaran is his cousin, so he did marry his cousin. He killed a guy like over cockfighting, rooster fighting, and then like throughout his life he's tortured by the ghost and he sees Prudencio Aguilar's ghost show up, and then they become friends, and so he sort of makes peace with the ghost, and then when he's out here sitting in the rain under the tree, he often talks to Prudencio Aguilar's ghost, and he also retreats into his own mind and builds a world in his head. I think maybe more than any other character, Jose Arcadio Buendia feels like a character from myth. All things considered, I think he's going to go in the A tier. Next up, Ursula Iguaran. To be honest with you, she is the MVP of the entire story. She holds the Buendia family together for like more than 100 years. She has extreme willpower, extreme diligence. She actually has common sense, which is pretty rare for somebody in the Buendia family. She does some crazy stuff, like she discovers a path to the outside world from their village of Macondo, which even her husband could not. She's very perceptive, even though she loses her eyesight later in the story. She is one of the characters who vocalizes the theme of time being a circle and these cycles happening over and over again. Definitely one negative of Ursula is that she did marry her cousin, but for the purposes of this story, that's small potatoes. I'm gonna give her a pass. Easy S tier. Alright, next up we have Melquiades. This dude travels around the world with a troupe. He sells stuff. He's super smart. He's very worldly, and honestly, he's pretty rad. He's generally honest. He sells a bunch of stuff to Jose Arcadio Buendia, but like when Jose Arcadio can't make that stuff work, Melquiades like gives him like a decent refund. He didn't have to do that. He's also dubiously affected by death. This dude dies like at least 2 or 3 times in the book and comes back in various forms, and even when he's like dead, you think, he's still like sort of ghostly presence for a lot of the Buendia family. I have him holding a pen with ink and like a parchment scroll because he makes these scrolls that some men in the Buendia family start to like try to decipher, and they're really complicated. All the events in them are not like spelled out chronologically and stuff like that, and so it takes several generations for the Buendia family to decipher these scrolls. We're going to talk about this later, but this has implications for the ending of the book and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Melquiades goes in the S tier. Next up, Pilar Ternera. I drew her here on a stack of like cards because she reads people's futures via cards. Like Melquiades, she's not part of the Buendia family, but she fathers 2 children with 2 different members of the Buendia family, so she's definitely involved in this bloodline. She's of the similar generation as Ursula and Jose. She's a really interesting character. She's very complex. She's not really good or bad. It's pretty cool that she can tell people's futures via the cards, and honestly, it seems like reasonably accurate, her skills, but they don't help a lot of people. A lot of people run headlong into their fate regardless of what she tells them. And actually, I gotta give it to her. One of her sons doesn't know that this is his mother, and he really wants to fuck her, and she says no, and she finds another woman for him. And honestly, respect, because a lot of characters in this book don't seem to have the ability to not have sex with their family members. Pilar Ternera goes in the B tier. So we're moving on to the second generation. We're gonna start with Colonel Aureliano Buendia. In this picture here, I drew him pissing on the tree that Jose Arcadio Buendia, his dad, is tied up to. This is where he dies. He dies like seconds later. He just kind of like slumps over against the tree, and people don't realize he's dead for like a day. He's a very complex character, kind of a piece of shit, but I really liked reading about him. He's maybe like one of the most central characters to the entire novel. He probably has the most page time, if you can call it that. There's some cool things about him. He has premonitions and flashbacks. He's really good at working with metals, and he makes like these little gold fishes all the time. But he's also kind of like a bad dude. He falls in love with a very underage girl, waits until she's like even remotely able to marry him, marries her, has kids with her, she dies in childbirth. So he like kind of killed her. Then he becomes a colonel in the guerrilla forces fighting against the government. He leads a ton of insurrections that all fail. He gets a bunch of his friends and admirers and peers killed. And when he comes home, he can't really adapt to normal life, and he just kind of ends up like a withered husk of a person. He fathered Aureliano Jose with Pilar Ternera, one of the 2 kids that Pilar had with the Buendia family, and he also fathered 17 other Aurelianos with a bunch of women during his crusades on the battlefield. And all of his kids die in one night. They get hunted down for extermination, and all of his kids are killed. Despite all of that, I thought he was fascinating. Colonel Aureliano Buendia goes in the A tier. Next up, Jose Arcadio, son of Ursula and Jose Arcadio Buendia, brother of Aureliano Buendia. This dude has a giant cock. Like his brother, he also has a kid with Pilar Ternera. When he learns this, he does not take responsibility. He finds a traveling girl, part of Melquiades' troop, splits town with her, gets out of there, isn't seen forever. When he comes back, he's like this tattooed, muscly, fucked up type dude. He comes home. We haven't talked about Rebecca yet, but he has an adopted sister named Rebecca. They fall in love. He starts fucking his adopted sister. He's also just kind of like not a nice dude. I drew him with a gun here because he starts extorting everybody for taxes. With this gun, he saves his brother from being executed. Also, tying into the gun imagery, when he dies, he stinks of gunpowder so bad, and it never lets up, and they like bury him and pour a concrete slab over his grave to like get the gunpowder smell to stop. When he dies, there's like this amazing imagery in the book of a little blood stream like working its way through town into the Buendia house up to Ursula, and she like notices it and immediately like realizes her son has died, and it's probably like one of my favorite paragraphs in the book. I do not like this dude. Jose Arcadio goes in the D tier. Okay, next up, Amaranta. She is the sister of Aureliano and Jose Arcadio. She is very strong-willed, kind of scared, but also very lively, kind of jealous and vengeful also. Her adopted sister Rebecca, they're in love with the same man. She does not take it well. She says she's gonna kill Rebecca, and then Rebecca falls in love with Jose Arcadio, so then that you'd think would be no problem, but then she leads that dude on. His name is Pietro Crespi. We're going to talk about him in a second. She kind of leads him on and then is like, wait, nope, I would never marry you. And then she does it again with another dude named Geronaldo Marquez, one of Colonel Aureliano Buendia's friends. She leads him on and then is like, psych, never mind. I drew her here sewing a dress because she sews her own funeral clothes. And as soon as she's done, she dies and they bury her in them. It's like she was preparing her death and dies exactly on time. A definite negative is that with her nephew, she has kind of like this hint of incest relationship where they're like making out and stuff. I don't think they ever have sex, but then like when she realizes it's going too far, she kind of like pulls back. So like, good on you. I would say she kind of reminds me of my sister, which like, Overall, I like Amaranta, B tier. Next up, Rebecca. Rebecca is honestly hardcore as hell. She shows up at the Buendia household dragging this bag filled with her parents' bones. And there's a note that says she's related to the Buendia family somehow, but no one really knows who they're talking about. And for a long time, she just eats dirt and plaster. She starts dating this dude called Pietro Crespi, who's this Italian piano guy. They're gonna get married, but then Jose Arcadio shows back up, and Rebecca's like, holy fuck. That's the hottest dude I've ever seen. Dumps Pietro, starts dating her brother, adopted brother, whatever, and then maybe ends up killing him. He dies of a gunshot wound. No one really knows who did it. She was the only one around. And then she just lives out the rest of her life by herself in that house and dies, and nobody knows for a while. Rebecca goes in the C tier. I'm gonna do Remedios Mascode next. She is a very young girl who Colonel Aureliano Buendia falls in love with. She's just a child. Honestly, she really tries her best, and I think she steps it up and tries to be a wife and an adult when she is thrust into an unfortunate situation. She unfortunately dies in childbirth, which is pretty fucked up, and so she's barely in the book, but I really felt for her, and I'm gonna put her in the B tier. Okay, next up, Pietro Crespi. This is an Italian guy who is in and around Macondo setting up these piano things. I think there's a pianola that he sets up. It's kind of like an auto piano playing thing. I think you can also play it yourself. He also dances and stuff like that, and he's really handsome. And Rebecca falls in love with him until she falls in love with Jose Arcadio. But generally, he seems like a really good dude. He's really sweet, he's patient, and he did not deserve to have his heart broken like that. Yeah, he doesn't take it very well. Bro kills himself. Overall, I think he's a solid guy. I want to put him in the A tier. Okay, we're kind of moving on to the third generation here. I'm going to start with Aureliano Jose, who's the son of Colonel Arcadio Buendia and Pilar Ternera. I drew him here, peeking in the doorway at a pair of sewing hands, which are Amarantas. And I did that because he just want to fucks Amaranta. That's not how you speak English. Because he just wants to fuck her so bad. That's basically it. I don't really like him. I think he's generally boring, and he wants to fuck his aunt. So, D tier. Here's Pilar Ternera's other son, the one she has with Jose Arcadio. His name is Arcadio. Seems like he's gonna be on a good path at first. He becomes a teacher at the local schoolhouse, and then when his brothers go away, and his dad is incapable of leading the town, they put him in charge, and he just becomes like a tyrant. One little taste of power, and it just corrupts him. So that sucks. Also, he tries to sleep with Pilar Ternera, his own mother. Not cool. Luckily, she's like, hey, you know what? Let's not do that. I'm gonna set you up with somebody else. She sets him up with Santa Sofia de la Piedad. We'll talk about her in a second. For all these reasons, Arcadio, also in the D tier. Santa Sofia de la Piedad. She is the daughter of a local shopkeeper. She's described as having the gift of not existing until you look at her, which I think is pretty interesting. She's generally pretty quiet. She's generally pretty hardworking, stays out of the way. When Ursula dies and the house of the Buendia family no longer becomes a place that she feels comfortable, she just straight up leaves. She packs her bags and gets out of there and is never seen again, which honestly I respect. Not that interesting in any other capacity though, so Santa Sofia de la Piedad goes in the C tier. All right, we're moving down another generation. Arcadio and Santa Sofia de la Piedad had 3 kids. They had twins, Aureliano Segundo and Jose Arcadio Segundo, and they also had a daughter named Remedios the Beauty. Let's talk about her first. Here's Remedios the Beauty. There she is making her exit. Basically, Remedios is an absolute Chad. She is hot as hell. She doesn't understand that she's hot as hell. And dudes are literally dying. People fall off roofs trying to peek in at her and stuff like that. And she does not give a fuck. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you so weird? She does the bare minimum to meet societal expectations. Colonel Arcadio Buendia says that she might be the most enlightened of anybody among them. And that he feels that she's gone to war and come back. And then when she's had enough of being here on Earth. She leaves the story by literally just like rapturing herself. She just takes off one day holding a sheet, and there's a lady there whose sheet it is named Fernanda, and she's down there on the bottom like, what the fuck, Remedios? And I loved reading about her. Remedios the Beauty goes in the S tier. So next up we have Aureliano Segundo and Jose Arcadio Segundo. These are twins. Something that I thought was really interesting is that the book has kind of like all the Jose's are like this and all the Aurelianos are like this. And then these guys are kind of opposites. And so Ursula's like, we messed it up. We like lost track of which one was which because they're twins. And then they kind of grow up opposite. And then when they die very close to each other. And the book just says that like these drunkards were the ones who like put them in their coffins and they just mixed it up. And so they got buried in each other's graves again. Did they go back to where they belonged, you know? Aureliano Segundo is honestly just kind of a mess of a guy. He has a beautiful wife who's kind of really just cold and mean. So he also has a mistress who, the mistress actually was this dude's girlfriend when they were younger, and then this dude started sleeping with her also, and then this dude stopped, and then this dude just kept sleeping with her for the rest of his life. He loves eating, partying. He can never really hold on to money that well. When the good times are good, he's spending it, and when the bad times are bad, he's just destitute. As his money is running out, he becomes like obsessed with finding this treasure that Ursula had hid somewhere, and he just kind of like loses his mind looking for it. And also, he just kind of like takes the easy answers. Like his own daughter has a son that his wife takes and then lies about, and we're gonna get to that. But then like he doesn't really investigate. He just kind of like takes it at face value, and he really kind of does his daughter and his grandson dirty in that regard. I'm gonna put him in the C tier. Kind of in contrast, Jose Arcadio Segundo is just kind of like a more sad dude. His life is just kind of marked by violence. He's witnessed this execution when he was really young, and I think it just kind of had like a formative effect on him. He ends up in this, what the book calls a banana company massacre. There's like this banana company that is a central part of the town for a little bit, and I think it's based on a real life event. But then it like gets covered up and all the bodies are loaded onto a train, and like he's inexplicably alive and ends up on the train even though he's amidst like these boxcars full of bodies, and jumps off, and it just like fucks him up. And he's trying to convince everybody that it actually happened, and no one really believes it, and everybody just kind of forgets about it because the government and the company and everybody is like, it didn't happen, what are you talking about? He's enterprising, at least at first. He tries to get this boating route to the village and stuff like that, and he succeeds like once, but then it can't really get off the ground. We talked about Melchiades' scrolls at the beginning. He starts to like shut himself away and try to start really deciphering these scrolls. I think that honestly, he's a pretty okay guy. I'm gonna put Jose Arcadio Segundo in the B tier. Petra Coates. She is the mistress that I was just talking about. She is perpetually in a situationship with Aureliano Segundo because he's married. She started out dating Jose Arcadio Segundo, and then Aureliano slipped in one day. Honestly, I feel for her. She doesn't have the best life, but also she is pretty nice and like takes it as it comes. She's kind of a fertility charm, apparently. I drew her with a sheep here because as her and Aureliano Segundo fuck, their livestock also just like starts doing numbers and they get some good money from that for a while. After his passing, she still contributes to his wife and their family. Like she sends like a basket weekly or monthly or something to them with food and supplies and stuff, which is really generous, and she didn't have to do that. All around, she seems like a pretty cool gal. Petra Coates goes in the B tier. It's time. We gotta talk about Fernanda del Carpio. She is the wife of Aureliano Segundo. She comes to the village as a challenger to Remedios the Beauty in the traveling troops beauty pageant. She was raised in like this noble family that had kind of fallen from grace and had fallen on hard times, yet they told her that she was going to be a queen. And they raised her with all the mannerisms and teachings of a queen, and that never ever materializes for her, and she never gets over it, and she has a spoon up her ass for the rest of time because of it. She comes into the Buendia family house, kind of overthrows Ursula, who's really old at this point, and starts foisting her ways of doing things on the rest of the house, even though that's never how they've been done, and not really to the benefit of everybody else. It becomes very cold and sterile, and not the lively place that it had been for the previous part of the book. There's a lot of stuff about her that sucks. Like she believes in these false doctors and like this fake ailment that honestly I don't really understand what was going on with that part of the book, but I'm like, it's pretty dumb. She seems pretty dumb. I didn't like it. The real negative comes when her daughter, who we're going to talk about in a second, has a child, and then she doesn't approve of that child, so she takes it away and ships her daughter off and hides that son from the world and raises him as a member of the family without knowing his true parentage, and kind of dooms him to fulfilling this Buendia family curse of incest. So that's not cool. And then also she frames her daughter's lover as a thief and gets him killed, which is pretty fucked up. So Fernanda del Carpio, not a good lady, going in the F tier, our first F tier. We're moving on to yet another generation here with 3 more children. These are the children of Aureliano II and Fernanda del Carpio. I'm going to start with Renata Remedios, aka Meme, as she is more commonly known in the book. She starts out as like a really lively girl, and she can play the clavichord, which is like a piano, I think, like a champ. She starts dating this guy. She falls in love with this guy named Mauricio Babylonia and is seeing him in secret. Fernanda del Carpio finds out and does not approve. She actually gets pregnant via Mauricio Babylonia, and when she births that child, Fernanda steals that child away and ships her off to a nunnery. Fernanda also, as we said, framed Mauricio for being a chicken thief, and he gets shot as a consequence. And when he dies, Meme just kind of like clams up and doesn't talk, and she literally never speaks again. She goes and becomes a nun, dies a silent nun, so pretty tragic. Meme, I'm gonna put in the C tier. Next up, Jose Arcadio II, number 2. This dude, Meme's brother, there's a lot of talk of him becoming the Pope. And Ursula is really on him to try and like make him into a pure, good human, because so many of these people have kind of gone astray. So they send this guy off to study Catholicism, I think in Rome. He comes back like all hoity-toity, and he starts hanging around with some small boys. And they like bathe him and like hang out with him and touch him. And so I guess he really did learn Catholicism through and through. But zing! But yeah, he also finds that like fortune that I was talking about Aureliano II wanting to find, and so he just starts leeching off of that, lounging around, just kind of being a drain on everybody and just kind of a general piece of shit. And then some of these boys show up while he's in the bathtub and kill him and steal his money, which is honestly deserved. Jose Arcadio II sucks. He's going in the F tier. Next up, Amaranta Ursula. She is another one of the siblings. She gets sent off to study in Belgium, and as a consequence, she becomes very worldly and kind of modern. And so I have her coming back with like some bags. She comes back with like a fuck ton of suitcases and stuff, and like different kind of clothing and stuff to everybody else. And she's really loud. And she comes back with her husband, Gaston, and she leads him around on the end of a ribbon that's tied around his neck like a leash. And she like wants to like fuck all the time. However, when she comes back, she starts not wanting to fuck Gaston as much and starts wanting to fuck Meme's child, who Fernanda has hidden the parentage of, so nobody's really sure that he's blood related and stuff like that. And that is kind of the beginning of the end. They fall in love and they're doing it like rabbits, and it's not, you know, the choice that I would make in that situation is all I'm saying. I don't know, I'm gonna put her in the D tier. And while we're here, let's talk about Mauricio Babylonia. This dude is the guy that Meme fell in love with. I think he's like a mechanic or something like that. They go to the movies and like get mackin' in those seats. Honestly, he seems like a pretty decent guy. Meme's really happy. He's like, I think gonna commit to her. Like, it seems like this could be a way for the Buendia family curse to break, for them to not have children with the people that they're related to and to not kind of go down these paths of self-destruction. But how everything in this book goes, that does not work out. He is found out. Fernanda does not approve of him and Meme doing it outside of wedlock. She schemes and frames him as a chicken thief when he's coming over one night, and as a consequence he is shot, and so here he is bleeding out on the ground with some chickens in the background. Honestly, the biggest negative of him is that he fathers Aureliano Babylonia, who I do not like, and we're going to talk about momentarily. But overall, he did not deserve what he got, and he was a very good chance, maybe the best chance, at avoiding the Buendia family curse, or at least starting an offshoot that wasn't as cursed. I'm going to put Mauricio Babylonia in the A tier. Second to last, Gaston. This is Amaranta Ursula's husband, who she comes back from Brussels with. He's a little bit older than her. He's like a businessman or something, and he's an extreme wife guy. He lets her lead him around on a ribbon, which honestly maybe speaks to his confidence. He's pretty wealthy. He rides one of those bikes with like one giant wheel and one tiny wheel, a velocipede, I think it's called in the book, which sounds like a centipede that can like run at like Mach 2. I'm glad it's not that, because that would fucking suck. I think that might be the end of the human race if centipedes could run that fast. It would be the end of me for sure. I would not want to live in a world with velocipedes. But anyway, when Amaranta Ursula starts cheating on him with her own blood, honestly, he's kind of chill about it. He's like, oh well, he takes it in stride. I think he had already gone back to Europe to like put in a business plan at this point, and he's been kind of out of it, and he's like, whatever, you do you. Probably has some side chick over in Belgium. He's kind of in and out of the story. He's not super interesting. He seems a little pompous. I'm gonna put Gaston in the C tier. All right, I gotta move some of this around. We are down to the final character that I'm gonna rank, Aureliano Babylonia. This is the son of Meme and Mauricio Babylonia, who Fernanda steals away and lies about his parentage. And to be honest, at first, he seems okay. He's like very studious and he likes being inside the house. He doesn't really want to explore the outside world. He starts deciphering Melquiades' scrolls, which is kind of like an obsession that is run throughout the book, but also seems sort of noble because it's like a quest for knowledge. When Amaranta Ursula comes back from Belgium, he just like becomes obsessed with her. He's never seen a woman like her, which to be honest, there's no other woman in Macondo like her. But then he starts seeing this lady whose name sounds like a slur, so I'm not gonna say it, but I looked it up and it translates to Black Magic, so that's what I'm gonna call her. He starts seeing this lady called Black Magic, who's like a prostitute. He seems to be like pretty good to her, and she starts to catch feels. Then he confesses that he's seeing her just to take his mind off of his sister, AKA his aunt. Weird, twisted tree, I told you, right? And so he kind of like breaks her heart, and then so she starts charging him instead of like giving him like a freebie. Even though he's kind of shitty to her, later on in the story she like still supports him, and I don't know, I feel for Black Magic too. I didn't put her up here because she has a pretty minor role in the story, but I did feel bad for her. So then once Gaston is out of the picture, him and Amaranta Ursula are just like going at it. She eventually has a kid and then dies in childbirth. Let me rewind back to the beginning of the story. Ursula and Jose Arcadio Buendia are cousins. Ursula was terrified that their children would have animal body parts because she had witnessed a previous incident of incest result in a child with a pigtail. And that's exactly what happens here. This unintended incest situation due to Fernanda concealing away his parentage leads to Amaranta and Aureliano Babylonia doing it, mixing their blood. They have a child of incest who finally, after all of these chances at avoiding incest, produces that pigtailed child. But not even that deters him. He's happy at first because he's told that they can just do surgery and remove the pigtail, and it's not until Amaranta Ursula actually bleeds out and dies because of childbirth that he just loses his mind. And he loses it to such a degree that he forgets about the baby. He completely forgets and neglects this baby, which I cannot forgive him for. And the baby is literally taken away by ants. I could not believe this. I had to read the sentence like a few times to be like, is that what it said? That ants like carried this baby away? And sure enough, they did. I drew it right here. He is too indisposed because his aunt, sister, I don't even know, like frickin' has died in childbirth. Can't step it up for the child who's already done dirty by making it a pigtailed child, and I hate him for it. That child lives for like 2 days or something. It's sad. The final thing that he does, he retreats back into this room where Melquiades' writings are, and he all of a sudden has like a realization, and he can read the writings. Turns out that Melquiades had chronicled the entire history of the Buendia family before it even happened. And so he's reading through all of this. He's getting to the point closest to time where they are right now. He's reading right up to current date, and he's about to find out how the story ends. And a storm is encroaching on Macondo, and by this time the town is kind of like withered from what it once was. It used to be this bustling, beautiful, bright, hopeful place, and now it's this place full of just sadness and desecration and years of tragedy. And this storm comes and wipes it from the map. Aureliano Babylonia is reading the events that are happening in real time. He's reading about the town getting destroyed by this hurricane, and he reads just as he dies that he dies. And the book ends. And it was fucking sick. Great ending. Horrible guy. Aureliano Babylonia goes in the F tier. And that is it. That is my ranking of the characters of 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I really love this book. It took me like 4 tries to get into it. What finally got me through it was downloading a PDF and reading it when I didn't want to do work at my desk at work. I think it's a great book. It made me think a lot about life trajectories and how things never go how you think they're gonna go, and about my relationships with people around me and my family, and, you know, are things fated to be, and, you know, do we have autonomy? All of these like complex ideas are wrapped up in like this really honestly compelling and sometimes kind of funny and just like really fascinating book that is unlike anything else that I've read. When this book finally clicked for me, it really sucked me in, and I'm really glad to have pushed through. Have you read this book? I would love to talk about it with somebody because no one that I know in real life has read it. So leave a comment if you have and what you thought about it, and if you have any other thoughts about your rankings, or like if you like any of these characters or don't like them or anything like that. I would love to talk about it with you. Or if you have any theories about the book or anything, please type something down there. Please type something, please, like and all that shit. Anyway, thank you for watching. Read some books. Peace.